Invocation, the blue note before the horn, before the sigh, is silence sharp as a New York sky. Then a breath, a crack, a tear in the air, and the night wears silk, the night lays bare. Is the sound of a soul that's been lived in twice. A sacrament of smoke and ice. It bends, it breaks, it stays aloof. The truth.
Hello there. My name is Lester G. Smith, also known as Neddy Smith. I'm a poet and a musician. As a poet and a musician, I have also written 4 books thus far. 1, Valerie Palmieri, A Small Town Girl. 2, a book of poems. 3, Hidden Possibilities, the music within. And Growing Up Amara. These are my literary achievements thus far, and there are more to come. As a musician, music facilitator, poet, recording artist, and adult educator, I have a diverse talent, not only captivated in the milieu of an audience, but have also inspired countless individuals to explore their own creativity. I can be captured in my own milieu of activities, but there comes a time when I have to impart those knowledge based on my experience over the years. I'm a dedicated educator. I love to give back. I love to teach. I love to train. These are some of the traits or the functions that I have over the years to give something back. Now, I have a 2-part program that I have put together, and hopefully I'll get through part 1 within the time frame that I have today. If not, I will make it a continuous of part 1, which is titled A Poet and a Musician. April is a very interesting and important month, not only as a birth month, but it's also the month that jazz is appreciated. Jazz appreciation always falls on April of every year. And it was first established through the Smithsonian Museum, National Museum of American History. and it continues each year, and it's been going on now for quite some time. So while talking about jazz musical form, we can also talk about poet and poems. April is also the National Poetry Month, and this was launched by the Academy of American Poets in 1996. And it's a world event, just as jazz is. And thus, I want to bring these two ideas together as a poet and a musician. As I'm introducing this, for me, this is a fascinating comparison that I'm going to try and get through between the poet and the musician. As a poet and the musician, they are often seen as the twin pillars of lyrical expression. Think about that for a moment. A poet and a musician share similar ideals in terms of putting lyrics or rhythm towards melody, whether the melody is verbal words or the melody is from an instrument or a voice. At their core, they are both architects of emotion. Think about that again. The poet and the musician are architects. So the twin pillars of lyrical expression can come together and evoke an emotion. We're getting there. So as the architect of these emotions, using their respective medium to capture the human experience. And that's what we're going to be investigating in part 1 about the poet and the musician. Here's a comparison that I've broken into their similarities, their fundamental differences, and how they interact. Very important. Let's look at the core similarities. At their heart, both poets and musicians are storytellers and emotional alchemists. Any poet you find, you will sense that whatever they do, whatever they say, whatever they express through language, through words, it's emotional. And it's going to grab you as the audience in ways that might not even grab the author of that poem. So when we think about storytellers, a musician is also a storyteller. Whether he's an instrumentalist or a multi-facet instrumentalist, a singer that uses one's voice, It's an instrument. Your entire being is an instrument. So think about it. Don't think about your instrument is just a wooden instrument or a brass instrument. You, I'm looking at you. Are your own instrument. But you have to recognize that. Now, so the primary goal is to translate the abstract. What is the abstract? A thought that the poet has or the musician has that is stored in the brain, that is stored within. It hasn't yet been published. It hasn't yet been known. It's published within oneself, but not published to the world. So think about that a moment. I'm giving you a lot of things to think about because I want you to go and do your research. I want you to discover for yourself what it is that make you appreciate jazz or appreciate poems. Now, so if the abstract is a thought that no one knows, how is it going to be conveyed to the audience? Well, it has to be written down. So a poet is going to write it down. Now the poet wants to be able to translate love, grief, rage, joy. So it has to be translated into something tangible. A tangible form for the audience, for the reader, for the listener to appreciate it. In a similar way, the musician has to do the same. The musician has to take that melody, that note, maybe a phrase, and translate it in a way that it is understood when it is listened to, when it is appreciated. So these two pillars are very important to understand in order to appreciate them. Because individually, you're going to appreciate different poem, different music from musicians all over the world, different cultures and the way they express themselves. So let's look at masters of rhythm. Let's look at that. Masters of rhythm and flow. Rhythm and flow. Just thinking about rhythm and flow, I can see that a poet who writes to tell a story. A poet works with meter and iambic pentameter. Now, when I said iambic pentameter, I mean penta is 5. But the syllables, it's a 2 syllable for each word. So if I say da dum, right? So let's look at it. Da dum, da dum, da dum, da dum, da dum. So there are 10 in all. So it's a 2 syllable. A soft and a hard, a long and a loud, long, loud, long, loud. And in fact, the way we talk sometimes, Shakespeare really is the master of this craft. So you could say, ba-dee, 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 ba-dee. You know, you can play with that. And then you can find words to add with that rhythm. So if I say now, ba-dee, 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 ah. Ba-dee, 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 ah. Now, think about the words you would put to replace the rhythm. So as a poet has to think in meter and also how they're going to express in terms of whether they're going to use iambic pentameter or some other device. And line breaks. You got to know when to break the line and to create a rhythm, because it's all about the rhythm. You see? So the poet has to think in terms of how he's going to make things happen, flow and break, and then go again. And you see, so you almost want to allow the audience to feel your expression, because that is critical. That is the most important thing. How is the audience going to feel? But most importantly, you have to know how to create the effect for the audience to feel something. And you know, you're going to leave it up to the audience to determine what it is that they're feeling. You can't force your feeling on them, but you've got to have something that feels, that has some kind of a flow. That is important. So, when we think about that as a poet, now let's look at the musician. Let's think about the musician. Musician is also a master of rhythm, just like the poet, a master of rhythm and flow. The musician has to have something that tells them what time. So the musician works in time signature. 4/4, 3/4. So it has to have some kind of a time signature so the drummer knows what patterns to play and make it effective. You see a drummer? I always say my drummers are like an octopus. They have so many things that they're doing. But if they miss one beat, it throws everybody off. I love drummers because when I'm playing my bass, you know, if I pick my bass up and I begin to play and my drummer is with me, oh man, I can go to bed. I can just groove with my drummer. And in jazz, it's something we talk about, syncopation. See, when we're swinging, just like a poet that flows, you know, yeah, rhythm and flow, like rhythm and blues, jazz and blues, the swing, you know, we can swing it. No matter what we're doing, we've got to know how to make it flow. The drummer is the timekeeper. Even if he's doing some syncopated stuff, there's something that's innate that says, yeah, he's keeping the time. He knows what time it is. He's got the time signature down. So both the poet and the musician are manipulating time. They are manipulating time to create a sense of movement. Because that is what it is, a sense of movement. The movement could be urgent, so there is an urgency, but also a calm. So one's got to know when one is composing how to make these happen. The flow, the rhythm, the flow. Yeah. How is it going to happen? Let's talk about the architects. The architects of sound. The architect of sounds. Poets use rhythm. We have established that. Alliteration. That's another device. Assonance. And cacophony to make language musical. As a poet needs to know the tools of the trade, what devices to use to conjure up the sound with words. See? Pow! For example, pow. That's a sound. So how the sound is composed is very critical. One. Architects of sounds. Let's think about that. Architects of sounds. Poets uses rhyme. They use the rhyme. They use alliterations, assonance, and cacophony to make language musical. Otherwise, language is boring. Who wants to sit and just listen to just pure words, just without emotion, without any action? Who wants to? Without any rhythm that moves you, that makes you want to move. So the poet uses, once again, rhyme, alliteration, assonance, and cacophony in order to make the language musical. So that's why poets are so musical whenever they try to perform their poems, right? They want to make it so musical that their natural voice now becomes sing-song. Next time, listen to how a poet reads sometime, just reading the words. It's important that they're feeling what they're reading. That's why it's good for when a poet is performing, performing their own work. You listen carefully as to how they intend for those words to flow. Next, a musician. Now let's talk about a musician. A musician uses melody, harmony, and timbre. Now, melody is moving horizontal. Do do dee dee do dee boo ba do be. Boo do ba dee do dee boo dee boo do be do ba. That's the melody. If you play it on the piano, it goes just across horizontally. But as a musician, the melody needs accompaniment. The accompaniment is harmonized harmonizing the melody. So that's vertical. So when the notes are played together, bang, it's like they're stacked together in thirds, basically speaking. So when we think about the musician, we're thinking about melody, we're thinking about harmony, we're also thinking about timbre. Now, timbre is basically the sound of the instrument. What instrument sound that you're looking for? What if I needed a flute? The timbre for the flute is different from that of a trumpet or from that of a saxophone. See, each instrument has its sound. So you've got to find the sound as a musician, as a composer. What sound are you looking for? What is that sound that's going to convey the emotion or the effect on the audience? So it's not just picking up an instrument and say, I want this. That instrument might not be the right instrument. So you've got to listen. Listen to the melody. Let the melody dictate how you want it, how you want things to happen. The melody is telling the story. The melody is the lead. So that you have to keep in mind. Right? So if the melody is taking you on a journey, you've got to listen and recognize the sound that you're trying to convey, the instrument you want to use, and how you want to use it. So don't just pick up an instrument. Sometimes a violin might be the instrument that will convey that melody to the audience much better than a saxophone or a trumpet. But that doesn't mean that they can't play. It's the sound. Listen to the sound the melody is trying to convey for you to recognize. All right, so what we get to understand now is that both are intensely focused on their work and sound. The work that they're doing, whether you're a poet or a musician, it comes down to the sound. It's not just what it means. Not just what it means, but it comes down to how their works sound. How the works sound. How the works sound is critical. So, once again, the poet uses words. The musician uses melody. How you want your poem to sound and flow, how you want the melody, you ready? Yeah. Okay. To be heard and played. Let's think about capturing the spirit. Let's think about capturing the vibe, the spirit of the age. You know, each time has its own vibe. You know, the 60s vibe, the 80s vibe, the 90s vibe, and even today's vibe. There was a German word that I was trying to remember, but anyway, it talks about the spirit of the time. And the spirit of the time, historically, both have served as the voice of their generation. Whether you're a poet, you know, you're going to capture the spirit of that time you're in. Or a musician, And I, especially for me, jazz is one of those musical form that really gets you talking about the time you're in. But I can also think about R&B singers like Marvin Gaye. What's going on? Marvin Gaye was telling a story about the time he was in. Bob Dylan. You see, they write about the time they're in. And there was another lady, I'm trying to remember, Joan Baez. I think that's her name, Joan Baez. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. These were authentic voices in the 60s during the civil rights and anti-war movement. So as a poet, you become a social commentator for the time you're in. So don't underestimate yourself as a poet, neither a musician. Whether you want to be a jazz musician, I'm just saying jazz because I'm thinking about Jazz Appreciation Month in April. So I hope that I was able to at least get you thinking, get you started in appreciating the art and the artist. I know AI is around, yes. But I'm talking about live performers. I'm talking about artists that spend time on the craft. And yes, AI can be an assistant, but it cannot replace. Don't think of AI as a replacement. And I'm talking now because it's the modern time. The technology has come full force and pushing you to compromise. But tools throughout the ages have come. They have come and stayed with us. How are you going to sit down and compose your music, compose your poetry to convey the spirit of the time? It's up to you. I hope this part one, I think I'm going to continue part one. There's some more I want to talk about in part one. So I will add a continuation to part one before I go into part two. Once again, my name is Lester G. Smith, aka Neddy Smith. I'll be with you soon. Take care for now.